The first generation NSX and second generation MR2 are Japan's flagship MR cars. Designed in the 80s and released in the 90s, both had pop-up headlights, both had timeless styling, both had variants that raced in Le Mans and the Japanese Grand Touring Championship, both were revered by the legendary Keiichi Tsuchiya, and in spite of the fact that the MR2 can actually be faster, the NSX is far more expensive. To find out why, let's compare. This is a 1993 MR2 Turbo that recently sold for nearly $33,000. It is in incredible condition and had under 4,400 miles on its odometer when this auction ended. But when I shared this information with the MR2 Owners Club on Facebook, well, people were shocked. This is because currently the price of the second generation MR2 rarely exceeds $10,000. Meanwhile, the first generation NSX can put you back 5 to 10 times that. This disparity can of course be explained by the economic principle of supply and demand, the supply being easy enough to sort out. Globally, only 18,000 first generation NSXs were ever sold. The second generation MR2, on the other hand, 130,000. Clearly, the worldwide NSX supply is lower than that of the MR2, but to understand what constitutes a higher demand, we'll have to put these cars side by side. In terms of size, both cars have a similar wheelbase, height, overall length, and width, but the MR2 is slightly smaller in every dimension, except its height. This is probably because MR2 owners prefer to wear top hats. The MR2 utilizes a traditional steel unibody frame, while the NSX has an all-aluminum monocoque unit, and bears the distinguished title of first production vehicle to do so. But in spite of how fancy that sounds, a 1993 MR2 Turbo can be nearly 300 pounds lighter than the NSX, depending on trim. Okay, so the MR2 is lighter, but surely the NSX puts out enough power to be faster, right? Well, before we talk engines, let's have a look at some of the unique features of these cars. Most NSXs are hardtops, but they did eventually get an optional and quite rare Targa top. Most MR2s, on the other hand, have T-tops, with its hardtop version being harder to find. For an excellent center of gravity, the NSX fuel tank is located right behind the driver. The MR2 fuel tank is even more unique as it runs down the middle of the car within the center console, kind of like a big old hot dog. The NSX had a 23-step paint process to prevent its aluminum frame from corroding, while the MR2 can rust, and that is sad. During its development, the NSX was refined on the racetrack by famed Formula One champion Ayrton Senna. The MR2 had similar treatment by famed Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR driver Dan Gurney. The MR2 has a very cool curved rear window, whereas the NSX apparently has a rear window from an F-16 Fighting Falcon, according to Honda at least. Alright, now let's talk engines. In 1993, the NSX chassis code NA1 utilized a naturally aspirated 3-liter V6 known as the C30A. With the MR2 chassis code SW20, Toyota opted for a 2-liter turbocharged inline-4 known as the 3S GTE. The C30A can achieve the surprisingly high rev limit of 8,000 RPMs thanks to titanium connecting rods, forged pistons, and an aluminum block with cast iron lined cylinders. The 3S GTE is a more traditional engine with a 6,000 RPM redline. It utilizes an aluminum head built by Yamaha that is mated to a rugged, albeit heavy cast iron block. Both engines utilize a variable induction system, but the C30A has an edge in tech, VTEC to be precise. But does this mean that the NSX is quicker than the MR2? Well, from the factory, the C30A put out 270 horsepower. The 3S GTE put out 220. But believe it or not, it did have more torque. When you factor the MR2's lighter weight and similar power output, the result is an MR2 that is shockingly quicker. But there is a bigger difference between these cars that is often overlooked, and that is suspension. The MR2 Turbo utilizes front and rear McPherson strut suspension. The NSX, on the other hand, has a front and rear double wishbone configuration. I'll spare you the detailed specs here since people tend to find suspension a bit boring, but the short version is that double wishbone setups are generally better from a performance perspective, and the NSX undoubtedly has an edge over the MR2 here. So in closing, the NSX is a more expensive vehicle due to its scarcity, chassis, suspension, and possibly because many people just aren't aware of how comparable it is to the MR2. What vehicles should we compare next? Sound off in the comments. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe.